Well, I'm catching up with Ron Weinberger, who is the CEO of EMVision. And this is the CEO Masterclass. It's a chance for us to hear from someone who's running a publicly listed company. It's not a recommendation for an investment, but it's certainly an opportunity to get the information you can't usually get anywhere else when it comes to a small or a micro cap company. And Ron's been with us before, but I want to know how the company's going. Good to see you, mate.
Lovely to see you, Peter.
Tell us about EMVision for people who've never ever come across the company before.
Sure. EMVision is an Australian ASX listed medical device company that specialises in using technology that is safe, fast and rapid for analysing and assessing the brains of patients. And we've we've received intellectual property, and we own intellectual property from the University of Queensland.
Okay. So what's the big illness that you're trying to really nail and get a good result from?
Yeah, we're focusing our first product on looking at brain imaging and really looking for stroke. Yeah. One of the big issues that we have today is that it's a huge health economic burden. Millions of people die per annum. Many of them are actually hospitalised for long periods of time or have extensive rehabilitation programs that they have to face later on in their lives. So it's a $100 billion health economic burden in the US alone. So it's a tremendous health economic burden, and it's many billions here in Australia as well.
Now, I presume you look at that potential market and you think, gee, the solutions at this point in time aren't as good as they can be. And yeah, as a consequence, you guys have come up with this product that obviously you must think is better than what's out there, because sure, otherwise, why would you be trying to push it? Sure. But tell us what the product is and what part of the problem does it actually do a really good job on?
So today, standard of care imaging for stroke and brain really occurs via two machines. One is the CT, computer tomography, and the other one is an MRI. Now, these are large, excellent imaging devices that are usually in facilities like the bowels of the hospital down at the basements, yep, and are under intense pressure. They're extremely expensive. They emit ionizing radiation in the case of CT and ferromagnetic radiation as a result of MRI. So they have safety issues that need to be managed and to be dealt with patients. So they need to be far away from other equipment. And you have to be very careful with the dosing in CT of patients as to how much radiation they're going to get. So they're excellent in terms of imaging the brain and looking for stroke, which is where we're really focusing at this point in time, but they're not portable. Now, what's really transformed the way that imaging is occurring is portability, and portability has been occurring via ultrasound. However, there isn't a way to look inside of the brain at the point of care by the bedside today, except for a device like ours.
Okay. So why couldn't ultrasound be used that same way?
Yeah, ultrasound is very ineffective in actually getting into the brain because it's got all the skull that it needs to get through. Okay. And so the sound waves literally bounce off. And I joke that that's what my wife tells happens to me as well. So,
okay, we won't go there. That's something for a dinner party, I think. Right? All right. So, you're better than an ultrasound because you can get through to the skull.
Yeah.
Your positive is that you're portable, unlike the MRI scan. How would you compare the calibre of the image that you create compared to, say, an MRI scan?
Well, we don't ever intend to replace MRI and CT. No. The purpose of our device is to be able to improve the quality of diagnostic information that is provided to the doctors at the point of care. So when a patient comes in a hospital, they do get a CT when they have a stroke, but when they're in recovering or being assessed while they're in the ward or in the ICU, the patient might be unconscious. So there isn't a way to actually assess the quality of recovery that is occurring with the patient, yep, and whether they've had another stroke or they need some urgent medical intervention. So what our device does is allow doctors to be able to see what's happening within the brain, to tell the difference between the two different types of stroke, find if there's a bleed or find if there's new damage that's occurred since the patient arrived in the hospital.
So it's like more monitoring, like her hearts are monitored and all that. this becomes a chance
Yeah.
for the medical carers to monitor what's going on in the brain without going into a big scan.
Yeah, absolutely. But we are very much also focused on another product, which is a downstream product for ambulances, which really gets to the heart of point of care diagnostics in the home of patients in order to be able to tell paramedics and first responders what is actually happening with the patient. And what we're ultimately looking towards is allowing those paramedics the freedom to intervene therapeutically with drugs that can actually either break up a clot primarily, or in the future stop bleeds.
So I guess in sporting accidents where someone ends up in an ambulance on the way to a hospital, you're saying if your product was in every ambulance, the person looking after them could just see how bad it is, and if it's bad, they could actually dispense something until they get to the hospital.
Yeah, exactly. And really importantly, there are two elements to it. One is triaging the patient to make sure they get to the right place. So the paramedics, that's critical because not all hospitals deal with all types of medical problems.
Okay.
And that's particularly important for stroke, where you might need to go in and actually remove a clot, and not all hospitals, in fact, there's only a select few hospitals that are able to do that. And to then also be able to therapeutically intervene. Those are the two key issues.
Okay. So Ron, so we've clarified that the product has a real need. What is the receptivity from the hospital system? Because they're going to be your best customers, I presume.
Absolutely, yeah.
What's the reaction, the receptivity from the hospitals for your product?
Look, we're very fortunate to have a large cohort of highly qualified clinicians that are supporting what it is that we're doing. We're part of the Australian Stroke Alliance, so two of the most eminent neurologists for stroke in Australia are there as part of that. Jeff Donnan and Steve Davis. They also sit on our advisory board now. They are very supportive of what it is that we're doing, because they do understand the need for improved imaging at point of care for patients. And particularly, we think just about urban areas, but rural areas, hard to reach areas, places where there are no CTs and MRIs. These are also underserved medical areas where we can actually take a portable device and actually place them so that they can improve the patient care.
Okay, so what is with a small cap company, having a great idea is the starting point, but are you getting customers to buy it and the market to respect this potential and create the share price that make you happy and other shareholders happy? Where are we on that continuum, do you think?
Well, so Peter, the first thing I would say, what's really important for a small company is execution, is the ability to be able to execute on time and to budget and to meet the milestones that you actually communicate to your shareholders. And we've been very fortunate up to this point in time that we've been able to do that. Now, on the continuum of where we are, we're just about to enter our first major clinical trial, which will be happening towards the end of the third quarter of this calendar year. Moving into the next calendar year. And that's really a major milestone for us. It's a multi-centre trial with hundreds of patients, which will allow us to get the data that will be the basis of our submissions for regulatory approval globally. So we're really moving in a couple of years. We've gone from prototyping all the way through into a large clinical trial with the support of some of the world's most prominent physicians.
Okay. If the trials end up being good, and I'm sure you would tell me they will be, but still we don't know, what's the next step? Do you need to get a thumbs up from the FDA, and does it take you a month of Sundays for that to happen?
Yeah, look, I mean, anywhere between 3 months and a year for regulatory approvals, depending on the type or basically the workload of the FDA. So that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind, is that administrations have also workloads that they need to backlog. But once we have the regulatory approvals, which FDA, we're looking for European approval as well, because the history file, as they call it, or the technical file, is the same for any regulatory body. So the foundations are the same. Some of the subtleties are different. So we can actually go for global access, market access. And at the same time, we've been talking to some of the larger manufacturers and imaging companies, as well as those that work in the portable device area, to shore up the fact that we have a product that they would be interested in purchasing and that there is commercial viability to what it is that we're doing. So we anticipate that we'd have some sort of distribution agreement tied up alongside the regulatory approvals so that we can enter the market as rapidly as possible.
By when, you reckon?
24.
Okay. Along the way, if you get really great results and people make the judgment call that FDA will probably give you a thumbs up within a year, wouldn't you be a takeover target from a big organisation?
Yeah, possibly. One of the things
But you'd say no way, you wouldn't give in, would you, Ron?
Well,
it depends on the
well,
price.
it depends on the price is right. Yeah,
That's
that's
right,
always
the price is right,
whether
yeah.
the price is right for the board to approve it. But I think that you'd have to evaluate that at the time. I think the opportunity for this company is huge, and I see this being a similar success to my previous company, Nanosonics, and which was also grown substantially and on its own. And partnering appropriately will allow us to get access to markets, and so we don't need to be taken over in order for us to be successful for our shareholders.
What about rivals? Is this like a race between 2 or 3 companies to do similar things but the products are different?
Yeah, I guess the biggest movement that's occurring in imaging space on CT and MRI is trying to make them smaller. And that's really where we could anticipate you could call it our greatest competition. But the problem there is those devices are still 600 kilograms. This is not the sort of device
How heavy is yours?
Is under 100 kilograms. So it's a portable car. It's like a shopping
so a strong
trolley.
bloke like you can lift it up.
No, but I could give it a good push.
But 2 people could do it.
2 people could
Two
do
good, 2 good.
it. But that's the whole trolley. So the headset itself, to be able to manipulate, is only a few kilograms. So it's a really easy to use. We've spent tremendous amount of design and engineering time in making this as easy and as usable so that people can actually access the patient and the experience of the patient is as good as possible.
Okay. Now, everyone's a whole lot of questions here, which I'm sure you designed, which I haven't asked, but I never do. Is there any other issue, do you think, someone who's looking at your company and think, oh, well, I might consider it. Are there any other issues that I should have asked that I haven't asked?
Well, just a couple things. We've been, in the present climate, I think it's really important to know that cash is king. And we're very well supported by government grants. So we have the Australian Stroke Alliance grant, which is approximately $8 million. We've got $6.8 million to draw down on that at the moment. We just got another payment for a progress milestone, and we have a Modern Manufacturing Initiative grant, which is for another $5 million. So that allows us to support our manufacturing as well. So we really have been very, very careful with our cash, not to dilute our shareholders and to ensure that we have enough capital to get us through these clinical trials to bring the greatest value to shareholders.
Yeah, and what you're basically saying is that you've got sort of government in your corner rooting for you guys.
Absolutely, absolutely, and have been all along. We've received well over $12 million, $15 million of grant funding to date. So we're very much supported by the government. Okay, Ron. It's a great story. I hope things work out for you, and ultimately you want the share price to reflect that. But it always takes time with this sort of companies. Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. Pleasure, mate. That's Ron Weinberger, CEO of EMVision.